Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Mark and I thank you so much for being here today. Well, if you're like me, you're kept up inside, you're kind of locking yourself away during the coronavirus or COVID-19, which is affecting pretty much everybody these days. And I know it's affecting me, and I've got my mask right here. I actually had a bunch of these masks, which I'm fortunate for because of some airbrush work I used to do and some installation work and things like that. So I had a few on hand, which I'm glad for. And they're not very comfortable and they're hard to breathe in. So I don't generally wear them. So I'm going to actually take this off. Ooh, that's a little better. I don't mean to make light of it. I'm not making a joke. It's sort of my sense of humor, but at the same time, it is a serious thing. And I'm glad I have a few of these masks on hand if I need them. So if I do have to go out somewhere, I do have a few masks. Not a lot, just a few. So my question for you is, what are you doing to get through these days? I know for me, it's a beautiful day outside. I've been taking a walk in my yard, not really hanging out with people. We have had some neighbors stop by and so forth, but we keep a safe distance and so forth, the social distancing. But there's a lot of things that I'm seeing happening online. There's a lot of people who are right now out of work, including myself, and I'm fortunate that I'm getting paid while I'm out of work, but there's a lot of people that are out of work right now, and a lot of people are taking to making videos, whether it's on TikTok or YouTube or Vimeo. There's a lot of video activity going on, so a lot of teachers are teaching things online, especially art classes, and I saw a dance class. My friend Micheline, she did like a little dance tutorial on, I think it was on Instagram. So there's a lot of great stuff going on out there. So I figured, this is a great opportunity for me to sort of bring that kind of level of instruction to you guys. So maybe there's some things I can share with you guys, some basic fundamental rules about drawing that you can apply right now, like use it right away. And that's the idea that I thought I'd bring today. Let's jump right into some just basic fundamentals of drawing that, again, you can apply right now, especially for young kids, teenagers, anybody who likes to draw. It doesn't matter what age, but some of these things are going to be specifically age-oriented. If you watch and you're older, you'll learn something too. So just come on along and let's see if these may be helpful for you. And again, thank you so much for coming by. I hope you enjoy this. Thanks. Bye. So the only thing we're really going to need for this little kind of conversation demonstration is an old sketchbook or some loose paper if you have some printer paper or even recycled paper, and a couple of Sharpies. If all you have is a ballpoint pen, that's fine too. The first thing I want to talk about when it comes to these rules or these basic drawing techniques is, number one, basic shapes. It's really important to remember that we have three basic shapes: a square, a circle, and a triangle. Just like we have basic colors. We have red, we have blue, and we have yellow. And while we can mix colors, we can also mix shapes. And that's a really important thing to remember. So when you add a square and a circle, you get sort of a puffed out square or rectangle. A circle plus a triangle is a puffed out triangle, and a triangle plus square is like a trapezoid. And remembering those things is important because you can then just put it in your mind and put it in the back of your brain, and you can draw off that information when it comes to your drawing. And when you say, I don't know what to draw, or I'm just kind of bored and I don't know what I can do, well, we can put this into practice right now. And that's the whole point of this video, is just basic tricks and techniques that you can use right now in your drawings. If you're bored and you're just sitting around watching Netflix or TV or whatever, you can put these drawing techniques to use. And remembering that we have basic shapes and secondary shapes that we can put into our drawings can really just start a drawing off and let us go in any direction we want, whether it's drawing a robot or drawing a car or drawing something silly or whatever. The second thing I want to talk about is putting shapes on a stage. Now, a lot of times I've seen, whether it's students or even older artists, a lot of people like to draw characters, and they put their characters on a white background, just existing in space, floating there. And here I've got this little guy who's just kind of waving and saying hello, but he's sitting on a white background. We've seen that in Apple ads and a lot of product ads where they put a product on a white background and it just kind of floats there. But a character deserves to live somewhere. And just like theater, you want your character to have somewhere to play, somewhere to live, somewhere to exist. A lot of kids will put a flat line under the character's feet, therefore he lives or she lives on this just flat plane. However, adding lines, horizon lines in different locations through the body of the character, below the character, or above the character, can change their setting and change their placement on the page. Here you can see if I covered up, this character's just living flat. Here, the horizon line is behind them, and then here, the horizon line is below them. And let me show you in a little bit more detail. So here we're going to draw out this little character. And again, this is something that I see with students a lot, and they don't know how to manipulate that horizon line. So here I'm going to put the horizon line right through the character with some mountains in the back. And you can do whatever you want on that stage now. You can put some little holes or some other little characters, but your character has a place to live now and exist and play on a stage. And that stage can be whatever we want it to be. Now, putting the horizon line under the character now has the character floating in space, and it gives it a whole different dimension and a whole different means of communication about what that character is experiencing. Putting the character below the horizon line, well, it puts the character in the foreground and lets us play with the background landscape however we want. Number 3, remembering that thick lines equal closer objects, while thin lines represent objects that are further away. This is another common thing that I see with new artists or artists that are unaware, is that thicker objects appear closer because they're bolder and stronger and more colorful in our view. So thinner objects fade away as they go back. If you're ever looking out at a cityscape from a distance, you'll notice that the buildings appear a little more faded than the objects in front of us. And if you're only using a single width pen, like this Sharpie here, you can just make it thicker by going over it a few times and creating a thicker line. Also, it's important to remember that thick lines, the thing I love to teach students, because this is sort of an epiphany for a lot of students, is that thick lines equal your outline, while thin lines equal your finer details, the details inside the drawing. And I'll illustrate that for you by just doing an outline of a head here and then adding some thin details. So the thick outline really pops while the inside details just are really tight and they communicate really well. So that's something that I wish a lot of young artists would start out understanding, is that those thick lines really pop more. Number 4, composing your page. And when you compose your page, this means, how do I explain this? Well, a lot of times what I see is especially with kids, they don't know how to compose the page, so they just start drawing a character, and the character sometimes goes off the page. I have a whole video about this, which I'll put a link to below. But without composing your page first, you get stuck, where your legs get cut off or your head and the arms get kind of squished or something. So composing your character on the page first, you know, here I'm doing a little sketch and then I refine the sketch to fit that character on the page. And you can do this with making a grid, creating some borders, and just laying out the page so you have everything composed before you do the drawing. It's really kind of an important thing. That way you don't kind of find yourself against the edges of the page and going off the page. Number 5, and the last one, is to leave the details for last. Don't worry about the details. Block in your shapes first. Here I'm just using a pencil to lightly sketch out some basic shapes, circles and triangles and things, and then I'm going to take my Sharpie and I'm going to just go over those shapes randomly, just creating a couple of characters here so you can see what I'm talking about. I'm just going to block in the shapes, and now I have them, and I can start adding more shapes, but just these are more detailed shapes like eyes, noses, and mouths. But I'm still not adding the fine details yet. I'm just getting things in place, and this is how I work even in my professional drawings. I do the same exact thing the same way. Block out the shapes first, and then I can start adding in the details, like on the tongue of the little weird baby there, or putting in this soda can, things like that. Adding in the fine details, put those in last. Once you've got everybody established, then you can see how things are going to work, and that way you don't start getting things kind of too busy and the viewer's eye is going to go all over the place. Now I can contain things, and I know what I want things to look like because I have the basic shapes laid out, the basic characters are there, and I can kind of plug in the details as I go. And you can see where you're missing things, and you can add them in later, and the page becomes composed. And here I'm going to put in a background and give my characters a place to live. And this is just an oval background with a cityscape in the background. And again, using that thick line to compose the objects to make them pop a little more, and then the thin lines to put them back in the distance. And so the last thing I need to do here is maybe add a little bit of color. And that's a whole other separate conversation. Maybe we'll talk about that later this week or something. But just 2 colors is fine for me. I'm adding a little yellow and a little blue just to make things pop a little more. These are accent colors. I don't need to color the whole thing. That's something else that young artists and new artists don't really understand, is that you don't have to color the whole thing. Just accents are great. Well, I hope this was a helpful conversation for you. I hope you can put these 5 drawing techniques to use. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. I've got a lot more coming for you. And I hope you're staying well and staying safe. Thank you so much for coming by, and God bless.